From track upgrades across the country to a subtle rule tweak that could finally see the end of double stacking in the Supercars pit lane, there's been plenty of news flying around recently, and given the long wait for the next Supercars event here in Perth, I wanted to do a dedicated news video discussing some of these key headlines and my thoughts on them. We'll kick off with a look back to the last event in Taupo and Supercars' highly successful return to New Zealand, and it sounds like a second round in the country is being seriously explored by the key stakeholders in the sport. One of the head honchos at Race, who owns Supercars, said on New Zealand radio that he's absolutely got an appetite for another round in New Zealand, and Tony Quinn as well said it would be a great way to expand the calendar. And Tony Quinn is a key stakeholder in all this because he obviously owns multiple racetracks in New Zealand and even Australia now with Queensland Raceway. But he also owns Highlands Motorsport Park on the South Island, which I think could be a big factor in these long-term plans. I think for me personally, if they are going to host a second round in New Zealand, while there are other fantastic circuits in the North Island, commercially for me it makes more sense to space those two events out geographically. You've already got Taupo in the North Island. Highlands Motorsport Park in the South Island strikes me as the next venue they could explore. Highlands Motorsport Park in its current form probably isn't fit to host Supercars yet, despite being an absolutely fantastic circuit. It sounds like they'll definitely need to upgrade the spectator facilities to welcome a crowd of that size, and I do suspect the track itself may have to be altered a little bit, particularly in the first sector, to promote some good Supercars racing. But I think it would be spectacular to have Supercars around that circuit, and I think it would be a fantastic addition to the calendar. Of course, all this is just speculation at this time, but fingers crossed we do see a second event in New Zealand. Back on the Australian side of the ditch, there's track news over here as well, starting of course with Mount Panorama. The Bathurst Regional Council had put forth plans to resurface the entire length of the Mount Panorama circuit, with the current surface I believe being installed just before the 2014 race. I was actually there for that event, and the track surface played a big role in the absolute madness we saw that weekend, but the circuit surface is getting old now, and the Bathurst Regional Council even hinted that their FIA Grade 2 license, which is necessary to host Supercars, could even be under threat if they don't complete the works in the coming years. So I strongly suspect we'll see a resurface of Mount Panorama in the coming years. And there's also been track upgrade news at Hidden Valley. They've received some government funding to upgrade the pit facilities, the paddock area with some lighting, some increased road access as well, and a new control tower and medical center as well. So mostly off-track stuff, but still exciting to see that circuit getting improvements. And it was noted in the media that future funding rounds or future plans for the venue even include permanent lighting installations, which could open up the possibility of night racing. For me, night racing around Darwin strikes me as a no-brainer given the climate up there, and also the sort of bull ring nature of the circuit. I would love to see that happen. And just to tick every corner of the country when it comes to track news, Speed Cafe reported that there may be very preliminary talks between Supercars and the West Australian government about a potential street circuit here in Western Australia. This wouldn't be in addition to the round at Wanneroo Raceway. This would actually replace that, and I think that will strike up a fair amount of debate in the Supercars and motor racing community. But for me personally, I don't think this is a terrible idea. I think this could be a really good way to elevate the West Australian round of the championship. Wanneroo Raceway sadly just doesn't seem to have any sign of being extended in the foreseeable future. And if that is the case, I feel like a street circuit could be a good way to actually reinvigorate the round here in Perth. The location for the event, it's been rumoured that Fremantle's been looked at, the Perth CBD's been looked at, but the most likely candidate, which I think is also the best place to host it, is actually in and around the Optus Stadium complex and maybe going over to the Burswood Casino as well. I think that's a great location to potentially host the race. There's a lot they can do with the circuit in that region, and I actually plan to do a dedicated video shortly after the Perth round exploring some different track concepts, given I'm a little bit familiar with this part of the world. There's some interesting circuit opportunities that I've already spotted there. So yeah, keep an eye out for that dedicated video. In the meantime, I'd be eager to hear what you think about the potential of a Perth street circuit. One thing that is almost certain to have an immediate impact on the sport though is some rule tweaks that happened after the Saturday race in Taupo that could spell the end of double stacking in Supercars. The issue right now is that teams don't know how long a safety car is going to last. They bring their both their guys into the pits to reduce the risk of losing positions in a free pit stop. But when you've got that many cars in the pit lane, absolute madness ensues. I kind of like the madness, I won't lie. You guys know me, I'm all for the entertainment in the sport, but I do respect double stacking can cause absolute calamity and really ruin some races. So while I like the chaos of it, I also really do understand this potential change. But the new rule will see that they essentially guarantee the safety car will go for a number of laps, allowing enough teams to get their guys both in the pits on different laps and not congest the pit lane. A few concerns I do have with this is that obviously a bit like the lapped cars overtaking rule in F1, I am worried this could prolong safety car periods beyond what they have to be just to clear an incident. So that's one thing to factor in here. Hopefully that's only an extra lap or so, though it shouldn't be as egregious as what we see with lap traffic in F1. And the other concern I have is that they say this is at the discretion of race control. So it doesn't mean it's going to happen every single safety car period. It's up to race control to decide whether they allow it or not. For me, that's a potential can of worms there. I like the fact they've given them flexibility, because if you're late in the race, everyone's done their pit stops, no one's interested. I mean, it's pointless to prolong the safety car period, but at the same time, if someone becomes a cropper of this decision, if someone, if there is double stacking because people think the safety car is going to come in on the next lap, I feel like it just opens the avenue for fans to get frustrated when this rule is and isn't implemented. I think there's good intention there, but I do feel like they need to get quite clear on when it will be implemented and when it won't. Something that shouldn't be so divisive among fans, though, is the rumours that new Dunlop tyres are being worked on for the championship from introduction next year in 2025. This is a big piece of news, something long overdue in my opinion, even as someone that's not overly technically savvy when it comes to the engineering side of the sport. For me, it seemed crazy that they carried over the Dunlop compounds from the Gen 2 era into Gen 3, especially given how different the cars behave. It was argued from day dot in Newcastle last year after the first Gen 3 event that the tyres just aren't fit for these cars. That has died down over the months and year now since. However, I would still definitely like to see some new boots on the cars that are specifically designed for the specification of Gen 3, and fingers crossed that is the next step in bringing some better racing to the category. Shifting gears back to a hotter topic now, and I must stress, like a few of the news items here today, this one is just speculation, although it has been reported on by fairly credible outlets. The reports are that Erebus Motorsport could be up for sale by the end of this year's championship. It wouldn't be a massive surprise to me. This team obviously won the Teams and Drivers Championship in 2023, but then had huge off-season turmoil with Brody Kostecki sitting out the opening rounds of the championship and multiple sponsors exiting that team as well. So regardless of where you sit on the Erebus situation, it's quite clear whatever's gone down has taken a toll on everybody involved, and given that they have won the Teams and Drivers Championship, you do wonder if they might just look at this situation and decide it's time to move on and put the team up for sale. I'd be curious to know who you'd like to see buy out Erebus Motorsport, if it is indeed true that it's on the market in the coming months. There's loads of potential candidates outside the sport and those that are in the Super 2 and Super 3 ranks as well. And then finally, let's unite ourselves again though on a topic that I'm sure we can all get behind. It sounds like Supercars are trying to negotiate some changes to the team racing charters, which is essentially the contract between Supercars and the teams, which currently make it very difficult to run more than 12 events, because it sounds like essentially Supercars have to pay a fairly substantial amount of money per car to the teams if they go above that number, and that makes expanding the calendar very difficult. Now for me, this is really good news. Like everyone, I get frustrated when Supercars say, oh, we just can't expand the calendar, it's not really possible in the current environment, that there's external factors at play. For me, my argument in that situation is, all right, well then change those factors, work on those factors to try and improve the situation and create an environment where you can give the fans what they want. And to be fair to them, if these rumors are true, it sounds like that's exactly what's happening right now. So I'm really excited by what's happening in the background in the sport right now. It sounds like there's real momentum building to build this sport up again post the pandemic. And fingers crossed, if everyone can agree on the terms and the direction, we're going to get a whole lot more racing in the future. And on that positive note, I will leave this video there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will link a lot of the articles I've referenced today down in the description. Given a lot of the news, it admittedly is quite speculative today, I definitely want you guys to be able to see the full stories and of course make your own judgment calls on some of this speculation. If you do want to see my full preview for the next round of the championship, which is of course my home event here in Perth, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll bring that to you very soon. And after the event as well, I want to explore some of those potential Perth street circuit concepts as well in a dedicated video. In the meantime, treat people like your trackside, and I will see you in the next one.